In 1899, 2 new reservoirs were commissioned to provide the industrial cities of the north with water. The man appointed to mastermind the scheme was Victorian engineer Edward Sandeman. Sandeman's task was to be huge. Not only did he have to design a system to store the water, he also had to build a network of underground pipelines and huge aqueducts above the ground, all to carry the water several miles down the valley to a treatment plant with nothing more to move it than gravity. From here, the treated water would then be sent to the nearby cities. Rather than constructing huge earthwork banks, as at Dale Dyke, Sandeman instead opted to build massive masonry dams at both Derwent and Howden. But with such a huge project came a whole set of problems. At the site of Derwent Dam, I met up with Vic Hallam, local historian for the Water Board. Vic, what difficulties did Sandeman have to build a masonry dam here?
I think that he knew straight away when he came to the plans that he wanted to build it out of stone rather than soil. And the major problem were to find the massive amounts of stone, which is about 1.25 million tonnes of stone used on the 2 projects.
Well, you've got hills all around us, surely.
We have, but with the ravaging of dam building, they couldn't obtain the stone from this valley, so they established a quarry some 10 miles southeast of here at a little place called Grindleford.
How did they get the stone from Grindleford here?
The Derwent Valley Water Board actually constructed their own railway 8.5 miles up into the valley.
So when the dam was being built, I mean, how did it all work?
You've got the main body of the dam being constructed down in the base of the valley, and then leading away from there, the ancillary works for the engine sheds and everything that goes together to keep the whole project going. Massive amounts of crushed stone were needed for concrete, and this area is where the stone was crushed. It was a manually operated plant, so 3 men were actually there loading the stones in for the various grades. And if you can imagine, probably 12 hours of loading onto the old stone crusher. It was a hard day.
So actually, it was really quite a massive operation.
A massive operation, and really with very small amount of mechanisation.
To build these 2 dams, Sandeman would require a large workforce. The men recruited for the job were known as navvies, named from their trade of building or navigating the country's canal and railway systems. Navvies had been exploited for decades. Earning little money and shunned by society, they had roamed the country with their families in tow, from job to job. At Howden Moor, just 10 miles from the Derwent Valley, lies the recently abandoned railway tunnel of Woodhead, built between 1854 and 1864, which once carried the main train route from Sheffield to Manchester. On the moors above the tunnel, amongst the huge spoil heaps produced from the excavation below, lie the remains of huts made from mud in which the navvies once lived.
They were stuck right up on top of the moor here, and they lived in appalling conditions. They had like sod huts, very little substantial accommodation or shelter of any kind. So people were getting diseased, there was no drainage, no sanitation. And it was when the Derwent Valley Water Board was set up to build the reservoirs, there was an Act of Parliament that insisted, forced them to provide high standard of accommodation for their navvy workforce.
With his new Act of Parliament, Edward Sandeman would have to provide decent accommodation for his workers. In 1901, halfway between the 2 dam sites, the engineer had a village constructed for the navvies, known as Tin Town. Tin Town consisted of 2 main streets, lined with terraces of small tin huts, from which the village earned its name. As well as housing, there was a school, a hospital, a post office, and even a police station. In the overgrown ruins of the old village, I met up with local historian Brian Robinson, whose grandfather, George Green, was one of the navvies who worked on the dams. In 1906, Brian's mother was born in the village. So Brian, is this the main street?
It is one of the two main streets which came through the village.
Well, I can see sort of platforms, presumably for all the tin huts.
The huts were there and on this side as well.
And where was your mum's house?
Just at the top of this terracing here, at the top of this small bank.
Go up and have a look. This is where the front wall would have been. So the flat area is where the house must have been then, is it? I can see there must have been steps going down to the road. And what was it like inside? Was it comfortable?
Yes, the walls were wooden lined, the usual pictures around the walls. And
so it was warm and cosy inside. It wasn't just like a tin hut, but actually really rather comfortable.
Yes, indeed so.
Living between the two dams at Howden and Derwent, Sandeman's navvies both worked and lived together as a single community. But whilst a new village had been raised for the workers, the creation of the dams would mean an enormous sacrifice for those already living in the valley below. For the new reservoirs to exist, several farms will have to be destroyed.